Hey friends, welcome back to Virtual Sunday School. Today we're talking about the Exodus, really how God parted the Red Sea for all of the Israelite people. We're going to take a look at what happened with Pharaoh's army and how God ultimately saved all of the Israelites from their attack. So I'm here in the church kitchen because I want to try something. In today's story, we're going to hear about how God separated the Red Sea. He literally split it into two. And so I wanted to see, can I split water into two? Let's see if I can do it with just my bare hands. Well, that didn't work. I wonder if there's something else in this kitchen that I could use to try and part the water. Nothing's working! I can't split the water into two. Well, let's go ahead and listen to today's Bible story from Mr. Kurt and see how Moses was able to do that with God's help.
Hi kids, Mr. Kurt here. Welcome back for another episode of Kurt's Corner. Today's reading comes from Exodus. God's people in Egypt worked hard for the Pharaoh, the king of Egypt. They had many troubles, but God heard their cries for help. He sent Moses to rescue them and lead them out of Egypt. God was going to give them a new home in a land called Canaan. They wouldn't have to work for the bad King Pharaoh anymore. They would have their own land, they would have enough food, and they would be free. Now, God's people were in a hurry. They packed up their clothes and food, they got their animals ready for the trip. It was time to go. I wonder, how would the people know where to go? God showed them where to go. During the day, God led them with a pillar of cloud. At night, God led them with a pillar of fire. The fire gave them light so they could see where they're going. Moses and the people walked and walked. Finally, they came to some water called the Red Sea. They set up their tents. They were tired and they settled down to sleep. Suddenly, someone saw a big army coming their way. It was the bad King Pharaoh and his soldiers. Rumble, rumble, rumble. The sound of the horse hoofs grew louder and louder. The people were scared. What will happen to us? They cried. The water in the sea is too deep for us to walk through it. There is no bridge for us to walk over it. We don't have a boat, so we can't sail across it. And we can't run fast enough to get around the water before Pharaoh's army catches us. Moses told the people, "Don't be afraid. God is with us. He led us out of Egypt. He will help us now. He will deliver us from our troubles." God told Moses to hold out his walking stick. So Moses did. Then a wonderful thing happened. All night the wind blew and blew and blew. God's cloud stood between the people and the bad king's army. The soldiers couldn't see what was happening. The wind blew a dry path in the Red Sea. The people walked on dry ground with big walls of water on both sides of them. Moses followed the people till they stood on the other side. Pharaoh's army tried to follow them, but God told Moses to stretch out his stick over the sea again. And when Moses did this, the water splashed together and covered the whole army. Not one soldier escaped. God was with his people. He helped them in their troubles. He rescued them from his enemies. Now the people were happy. They danced, sang, and played instruments to praise God. You are God's child. God sent Jesus to rescue you from sin and dying on the cross and rising again. When you have troubles, don't be afraid to call on God's help. He will help you with your troubles.
So we just heard in today's Bible story that the Israelites, they were in Egypt, but they didn't want to be there anymore. They were crying out to God, please save us. And so one day they decided they had enough. They packed up their things and they headed on their way out of Egypt. But they didn't really know where they were going. And so God guided them through the desert land in the night and the day through two special ways. In the daytime, he led them by a pillar of cloud, kind of like this. There was clouds in the sky, and God led them by making this keep going. And they followed this cloud in the daytime. And in the nighttime, God led them through a pillar of fire. Just like that, except huge. Can you imagine fire that filled up this whole space all the way up to the sky? That's how God led the Israelites. And so eventually they came upon the Red Sea, and they decided they needed some rest. So they pitched their tents and they went to sleep. But then there was a problem. See, someone saw all of Pharaoh's army coming after them. They were chasing after them, and all the Israelites, they got scared. They didn't want to go back to Egypt. So they said, Moses, what do we do? Moses was like, I don't know. Well, God told Moses to raise his staff up. And you know what happened? The Red Sea split into two. You know, before I tried to split water into two, I couldn't do it. That's because we're not able to do that. But you know what? God was able to do that. This massive amount of water, he split into two. And the Israelites were able to walk right through it because they couldn't walk around it. They couldn't hop right over it or go underneath it. They had to go through it, and God gave them that opportunity. Can you imagine walking through the Red Sea with those Israelites? I want you to pause the next screen and talk about the following questions and put your feet in their shoes. Think about what that must have been like. So the Israelites made it through the Red Sea just fine, but Pharaoh's army was still coming after them. And so God told Moses to raise his staff back up, and you know what happened? Those huge walls of water of the Red Sea, they came crashing down. You know what? All of Pharaoh's army went crashing down with that water. So God defeated Pharaoh's army, and he was able to set the Israelites free. And how amazing that is. So there's a couple things that we can apply here to ourselves. You see, at one point, the Israelites, they didn't trust God. They were afraid. They were worried that Pharaoh was going to take them back and put them into the lives that they didn't want to be in. Have you ever felt like that? Has there ever been a time where you didn't trust God? Or maybe a time that you felt like God wasn't there? That you were going to go back to a place you didn't want to be? I want you to go ahead and talk about that for just a minute. There are certainly times that we feel like God is very distant. He's very not in our lives. But I want to promise you that there has never been a time that God has left you alone. There has never been a time where God has not been with you. And so just like the Israelites, even though they felt that way, God was with them, and God walks with you every day of your life. And there are times in this world where we feel defeated by the devil, but God still triumphs over him. He has won. And that's why he sent Jesus to die on the cross, to win over Satan and death and sin. Jesus lives and he wins. And so I want you to take that with you each and every day. When you feel scared and alone and lost, know that God is right by your side and he loves you so much. Let's take a look at today's memory verse to see how we can call upon God in the times where we feel scared and alone. Today's memory verse tells us exactly what we need to do when we are afraid or scared or just feel lost. This is what it says. Call upon me in the day of trouble, and I will deliver you. Psalm 50, verse 15. Let's do that one more time. Call upon me in the day of trouble, and I will deliver you. Psalm 50, verse 15. I want you to remember, boys and girls, that you can always call upon the name of the Lord. You can pray to him, be in conversation with him all day long. And so don't forget that. When you're scared or afraid, God is right there, ready to listen to all of your worries. We talked about some big things today. God parted the Red Sea. There were these huge walls of water for the Israelites to walk through. They walked across on dry land. God defeated Pharaoh's army in the waters. God was doing big things back then in the lives of the Israelites. And you know what? He's doing big things in your life too. Big things that you would never expect. And so I want you to remember this week and always that our God is bigger than anything we could ever imagine. That he's right by your side and always present in your life. He's wrapping you up in his loving arms, and you are never alone. And so let's take some time to pray. I want you to fold your hands and bow your heads and close your eyes and repeat after me. Dear God, you helped your people at the Red Sea. When we are afraid, help us remember that you are with us in times of trouble too. Thank you for sending Jesus to rescue us from our enemy's sin by dying on the cross for us. Thank you for always taking care of us. Amen. We'll see you next week, boys and girls.